The history of editing. What is editing? Editing is selecting different scenes or clips and putting them together to design a movie.
The history of editing began with two pioneers called the Lumiere Brothers. The Lumiere Brothers were famous for making the first camera, which was called the cinematography. The cinematography is a device which is combined with a camera, a printer, and a projector. With this device, they created the first moving image in history, which is known by most people as the arrival of the train. The arrival of the train is 1 minute long, about a train which stops and people getting on. The whole film is shot in one angle, with no effects, no change of angle, no movement. When the Lumiere brothers presented this film to the public got scared as they thought the train was actually coming from the other side.
George Melies. As a young boy, George Melies was interested in art and magic. When he got older, he opened his own theatre where he performed magic tricks. One day, George Melies and his wife went to an unveiling of the cinematography. It was there they saw the Lumiere brothers presenting their first film, The Arrival of the Train. George Melies was interested in what the Lumiere brothers were showing to the public. He tried to buy the cinematography off them, but they refused as they thought he was a potential threat. So instead, he built his own camera, where he used other parts from other machines that he has created. And after that, he started creating many famous films, for example, The Trip to the Moon. After creating the camera, he sold his theatre and bought a studio where he can create countless films, in which he directed, designed, even acted. The editing technique that George Melies invented was the stop hat trick. The stop hat trick was accidentally discovered by George Melies when his camera got jammed and he lost a bit of footage in the middle. He did nothing about it until he reviewed the footage, when he discovered that objects jumped around, moved and transformed into other objects. Edwin S Porter. Like George Melies, Porter was inspired to make films, in which he created his first film, Life of a Fireman. But his most popular film was The Great Train Robbery, which also used most of Porter's editing techniques. The editing techniques used in this film was called cross-cutting, which is a technique of alternating two or more scenes that happen at the same moment but in different locations. D.W. Griffith. Griffith was famous for many films, but he was mostly famous for making A Birth of a Nation. The Birth of a Nation is about a civil war between the North and the KKK. D.W. Griffith was also famous for making Intolerance, Broken Blossom, and other films. But the reason why Birth of a Nation was so popular was that it used all of his editing techniques. Griffith pioneered the use of seamless or invisible editing, which is where the cut between shots matches the action perfectly. He also invented the close-up shot. Sergei Eisenstein. Sergei was famous for making films such as Battleship Potemkin, Alexander Nevsky, and many more. Sergei was famous for making 5 different types of montage. The first one is called metric montage. This is where shots are cut at equal lengths regardless of what's on screen. Rhythmic montage. This is where the shots are cut together based on timing, but unlike metric, this style gives some consideration to what's on the screen. Tonal montage is where the shots are put together for their emotional content. Overtonal montage. This is a culmination of the other 3. Intellectual montage. This is where shots are re-put together to give a metaphorical meaning. Directors such as George Melies and Sergei Eisenstein edited by using slicers, which means they were using linear editing. And linear editing was when all the frames had to be together and you couldn't go back to do anything. During the 1800s, the Lumiere Brothers and George Melies edited by using a slicer, which literally just sliced a tape in half. They use a slicer sometimes to go to the next scene, or even to use the stop hat trick like George Melies. Mostly during the time of D.W. Griffith and Sergei Eisenstein, they used a machine called the Melies, which is a much advanced version of a slicer. But during the 80s, where videotapes were around, there was an editing machine called Amplex, where you could rewind and fix mistakes, whilst during the time of Melies up to the time of D.W. Griffith, that was not possible. But nowadays we have non-linear editing, which started in the 80s, where a software called Edit Droid was invented and was used to make the Star Wars saga. But the non-linear editing that we do now is using software such as Final Cut Pro, iMovie, and Premiere. And this sort of approach was never possible during these times. So all the stuff that wasn't possible decades ago is now possible. For example, James Cameron. He wanted to create Avatar, but the technology wasn't there at the time. So he waited until it was available, and thanks to motion capture, he'll be able to create things out of their imagination that people during the time of the Lumiere Brothers and George Melies would find odd and strange. I will now demonstrate my editing technique in a scene from the film Psycho from Alfred Hitchcock. The clip begins with no music, just sound effects of the woman getting into the bath. The reason for that is that it gives a really high interest to the audience of what's going to happen next. The director uses cross-cutting in these several scenes to keep the audience's attention high to await of what's going to happen next. In this scene, there is a close-up of the murderer stabbing the lady in the bath. Starting from here, this entire scene for the next 1 minute and 30 seconds is a montage as it shows the scene of the lady being murdered, and each swing from the murderer crosses to a close-up of the woman in the bath, panicking as she's suffering from the pain. You can almost say it's like a jump cut, but several jump cuts, as it goes a few seconds further in time. Once again, the director uses cross-cutting to keep the attention of the audience high, to aware of what's going to happen after the attack. The editing technique used in this scene is match dissolve, which is matching the eye and the drain, trying to show to the audience that her life is being drained away.